Nancy Pelosi thought she controlled the room, until Tulsi Gabbard unleashed a 12-word reality check that destroyed her entirely. Nancy Pelosi was still grinning as Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard leaned into the microphone, delivering 12 words that ruined a 40-year political career. "Madam Speaker, you are under subpoena. Please stop deceiving the American public." Chairman John Moolenaar froze at the desk. Ranking Member Raja Krishnamoorthi, Pelosi's personal Democrat, her own endorsement, her solid ally of 9 years, refused to lift his head from that legal pad. Senator Josh Hawley closed his folder very deliberately, the exact way a guy closes a novel when he already understands how it finishes. 3 rows behind the testimony table, an 1-year-old lady from Fresno, California, named Erica Kius, folded her hands in her lap, anticipating the moment she had waited 5 years to witness. Cannon Caucus Room 390 was not meant to be where this occurred. The House Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party, led by Republican Congressman John Moolenaar of Michigan, alongside Democrat Raja Krishnamoorthi of Illinois as ranking member, had been secretly constructing a case for 18 months. The investigation was not concerning politics. The investigation was concerning money. Specifically, the probe was regarding a unique set of call options. On the 22nd of November 2022, Paul Pelosi, the 9-year-old spouse of then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi, bought between $1 and $5 million in Nvidia call options through a brokerage portfolio in San Francisco. 11 days prior, his spouse had managed the final House vote regarding the Chips and Science Act. That legislation directed $52 billion in federal funding to American semiconductor producers and their major technology buyers, explicitly including Nvidia. Within 7 weeks, those call options had increased roughly 170%. The Pelosi household's projected profit, $4 million. In February 2026, the panel issued a subpoena. Nancy Pelosi possessed 3 options. She could reject the subpoena, risking contempt of Congress. She could show up and invoke the 5th, or she could step into Canon 390, lift her right hand, place it upon a text of her preference, and address every inquiry under oath. She selected the 3rd alternative because Nancy Pelosi had never lost a broadcasted confrontation in 40 years of American politics, and she did not think she was going to fail this one. She stepped into the caucus chamber at 958 inches the morning. She wore white, the shade she consistently wore for battles she planned to win. She grinned at every camera in the space. At 1003, Chairman Moolenaar called the session to order. At 1007, Nancy Pelosi made the error that finished her. Chairman Moolenaar's tone was monotone. He was not a theatrical guy. Nobody in Michigan had ever labeled him as being one. "Madam Speaker, you are recognized for a 5-minute opening statement." Nancy Pelosi rested her hands on the witness desk. She refused to look at her script. She rarely did. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman, though I state for the record that I dispute the validity of this committee's power to demand my testimony on issues concerning my husband's personal financial choices, which I possess no insight of and no authority over. As I have declared multiple times over several years, this panel is not a fact-finding mission. It is political drama orchestrated by a Republican majority that has wasted 2 years failing to lead, and has currently resorted to bullying an 85-year-old lady during the last months of her duty to the American public. I have worked in this Congress for 40 years. I have approved the Affordable Care Act. I have impeached Donald Trump twice on valid constitutional basis. I have collected $1.25 billion for the Democratic Party to protect American democracy from the exact individuals who currently sit on this panel and pretend to be defending it. I will not be scolded today by a Republican faction that has forsaken every value it ever claimed to respect. I will not be scolded by a chairman. She shifted her gaze to Molinar, who showed no reaction, who has stayed quiet while his personal president runs one of the most crooked administrations in American history. And I will absolutely not be scolded by the individual sitting to my right. She turned her face deliberately toward Tulsi Gabbard. Director Gabbard, you abandoned the Democratic Party because you could not secure a primary. You spoke with Bashar al-Assad in Damascus during 2017. You protected Edward Snowden from the floor of the United States House of Representatives. You were labeled a Russian asset by the 2016 Democratic candidate for President of the United States of America, Hillary Rodham Clinton, and she was not incorrect. You are a pretty face for Vladimir Putin, Director Gabbard. You are a pretty face for Tucker Carlson. You are a pretty face for every guy in this nation who desires a female combat veteran to rubber stamp his delusional conspiracies about his personal government. You are not present today to protect the American public. You are present to assist a Republican panel target an 5-year-old departing Congresswoman whose spouse made financial choices that, I remind you, remain completely lawful under United States regulations. Mr. Chairman, I return back my remaining time. I await your inquiries. I do not anticipate them to be unbiased. Chairman Molinar struck his gavel once gently. The witness comments are documented. On the Democratic portion of the dais, Raja Krishnamoorthi did not clap. He did not agree. He did not glance at Pelosi whatsoever. He kept scribbling on his legal pad. Representative Seth Magaziner of Rhode Island, a Democrat, stared at the desk. Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan, a Democrat, stared at the roof. On the Republican portion, Representative Young Kim of California, Korean American, a participant of the panel for 3 years, calmly placed down her pen and crossed her hands. Representative Neil Dunn of Florida, a former combat doctor, a veteran, leaned forward very slightly for the initial time all morning. Senator Josh Hawley, seated in the guest witness line, clicked his pen shut. He refused to pick it back up. Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, Democrat, ex-CIA agent, ex-Pentagon official, seated 2 spots to Hawley's left, squeezed her hold on the edge of the desk under her folder where the C-SPAN broadcasts could not catch her knuckles turning white. Tulsi Gabbard showed no reaction. She refused to look at Nancy Pelosi. She gazed down at the tiny leather-bound text she had carried with her to the witness desk. It was not a Bible. It was a version of the Bhagavad Gita, the text she had been sworn in upon in the Oval Office by Attorney General Pam Bondi on the 12th of February, 2025. She laid her palm on it shortly, then she moved toward her mic. Chairman Molinar, Director Gabbard, you are permitted for a 5-minute opening statement. Tulsi Gabbard refused to place her hands on the desk the way Pelosi had. She folded them in her lap, the way a military veteran does when she is not yet certain where to rest them in a space where nobody has been fired at. Her tone was the tone of a lieutenant colonel speaking to soldiers at a funeral, deep, consistent, unhurried. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Krishnamoorthi, participants of the panel, thank you for the honor of speaking before you today. Before I commence my drafted comments, I wish to tackle the Madam Speaker's opening remarks directly, because I value this institution too deeply to permit lies to remain on the record without a reply. I did not abandon the Democratic Party because I could not secure a primary. I conquered 4 primaries inside the state of Hawaii as a Democrat between 2012 and 2018. I quit the Democratic National Committee in February of 2016 because I determined the primary system had been manipulated against Senator Bernard Sanders, and the subsequent WikiLeaks drops of John Podesta's messages verified that I was right. I did speak with Bashar al-Assad in January of 2017. I have never concealed that journey. I went on it because I had fought with the Hawaii Army National Guard Medical Unit in Balad, Iraq, from 2004 to 2005. I had seen young Americans bleed out on surgical beds in a conflict that a majority of the lawmakers of this Congress had approved without questioning what it would require. I did not desire another one. I still do not. I did protect Edward Snowden's leaks in 2013. I did not protect his choice to escape to the Russian Federation. I protected the American public's right to realize that their personal government was executing massive surveillance upon them. In breach of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, I took an oath to defend. Hillary Rodham Clinton did label me a Russian asset in October of 2019. I launched a defamation lawsuit against her in January of 2020. The dispute was resolved quietly. The method powerful individuals resolve matters. The agreement files are stored at the Superior Court of the State of New York. Any member of the media watching today can retrieve them tomorrow morning. Madam Speaker, everything you just uttered about me remains a piece of public data. I do not run from any of it. I do not regret any of it, and I am not going to explain any of it anymore during this session, because this session is not regarding me. With the chairman's approval, I would like to request for something very basic to be submitted into the log. Moulinar proceed. Director Gabbard. On the 10th of June 2024, the United States House of Representatives Committee on House Administrations, Subcommittee on Oversight, openly published 14 seconds of camera footage. The clip was captured on the 6th of January 2021. It was captured by Alexandra Pelosi, the Madam Speaker's daughter, from the rear seat of a car as the Madam Speaker was being extracted from the United States Capitol during the chaos. That clip is public data. It is on the subcommittee's video page. 51 million Americans have viewed it. With the chairman's approval, I would like to show it currently, 14 seconds, because what the Madam Speaker stated on the 6th of January 2021 in her own voice, in her own daughter's car, is crucial to why I am sitting in this seat today. Moulinar, the clerk, will run the clip. The 3 monitors attached to the walls of Canon. 390 monitors that had been mounted in 2023 for the committee's deep dive probe lit up. Nancy Pelosi's tone echoed the caucus room. Unmistakable, unaltered, not dubbed over, not manipulated by anyone other than her personal daughter's recording program. The tone of the most dominant female in the United States Congress over the past 40 years, talking on her personal toughest day. They believed that they possessed adequate personnel. It's not a matter of how they had. They don't realize. They clearly didn't realize, and I take accountability for not having them simply prepare for more. The monitors turned black. Nancy Pelosi's expression refused to twitch. Her hands clenched on the witness desk. She refused to speak. Tulsi Gabbard proceeded, remaining calm. Madam Speaker, those are your statements, your tone, your daughter's lens, your vehicle. You stated, quote, I take accountability. Over the past 5 years, Madam Speaker, you have collected roughly $20 million in Democratic Party donations for the activities of the January 6th Select Committee. You have given addresses on every major broadcast channel in the United States, pushing the fault for January 6th onto one individual, President Donald Trump. The 7 words you uttered in your personal daughter's car that afternoon, you have never repeated openly. Not on the House floor, not in a media briefing, not inside any of the 3 novels you have released since. 7 words, Madam Speaker. I take accountability for not preparing for more. I am going to remain here until you speak them in this chamber, under oath, on C-SPAN, before the American public, who have waited 5 years to listen to you speak them out loud. The quiet inside Canon 390 remained 14 seconds. During a broadcasted legislative session, 14 seconds is a significantly extended period. Nancy Pelosi refused to speak the 7 words. Chairman Molinar softly let the log indicate that the witness under oath rejected the chance to openly admit remarks she uttered on the 6th of January 2021 that have previously been publicly linked to her via verified recording. We will move to questioning. Molinar Director Gabbard, you possess 5 minutes in questioning the witness. Please begin. Tulsi Gabbard refused to utilize 5 minutes. She utilized 2. Madam Speaker, I wish to review a timeline. I will not request you to analyze any of it. I will simply request you to verify the days. Each of these days remains on the public log. Every American viewing this session can confirm each one in under 5 minutes upon their mobile, date 1 the 8th of November, 2022. You, as Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, managed the final House vote concerning the CHIPS and Science Act. The legislation directed $52 billion in federal funding to American semiconductor producers, specifically Nvidia Corporation and its major technology buyers. Is that accurate? Pelosi, the CHIPS and Science Act was a bipartisan legislation, the entire goal of which was to rebuild American. Madam Speaker, yes or no? A hesitation. Yes. Date 2, the 22nd of November 2022. 2 weeks after the CHIPS Act vote, your spouse, Paul Pelosi, bought between $1 and $5 million in Nvidia call options, carrying a strike target of $160 and an expiration month of January 2024. Documentation. The regular transaction record submitted in your title with the Clerk of the United States House of Representatives on the 16th of December 2022. Accurate? Another hesitation. Yes. Date 3, the 3rd of January 2023. Nvidia Corporation revealed the launch of its fresh H800 processor, built specifically to bypass Biden administration export restrictions concerning China, while maintaining the firm's market dominance in the People's Republic. The asset finished up roughly 7% that afternoon. I possess the final pricing details before me. Accurate? I do not monitor my husband's. Madam Speaker, yes or no? I do not remember that exact. I will submit the closing pricing details into the log. Mr. Chairman, this is bullying. Madam Speaker, it was Molinar this moment. Gently, solidly. You are under oath. The director has handed you a factual inquiry. The response is a piece of public data. The closing price of Nvidia Corporation asset on the 3rd of January 2023. Was it up roughly 7%? Yes or no? Pelosi's tone became quieter. Yes. Tulsi proceeded, date 4. The 17th of January 2023. Your husband's call options bought on November 22nd had surged by roughly 170%. Projected paper earnings at that moment, $4 million. Documentation capital, COM, and Quiver quantitative, both of which monitor legislative financial filings in real time and provide their info openly accessible. Accurate? I do not debate my husband's financial choices. Madam Speaker, the filings were submitted in your title. You endorsed them. I possess a duplicate of your autograph before me. Yes or no? Nancy Pelosi glanced at her attorney sitting behind her. Her attorney refused to glance back. Yes. Raja Krishnamoorthi, the Democratic ranking leader, continued scribbling. Representative Neil Dunn, the combat doctor, had not shifted in 7 minutes. Representative Young Kim of California was grinning very softly, not out of joy, but out of realization. Inside the 4th line, spot 9, a guy named Darren Hoover, father of Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover, murdered at Abbey Gate in Kabul on the 26th of August 2021, was staring at the ground. He was not staring at Nancy Pelosi. He had resolved prior to the session that he was not going to let her view his expression until the second mattered. Tulsi was not done. Madam Speaker, during the previous calendar year, per Quiver Quantitative, the Pelosi household investment account has beaten the Standard & Poor's 500 by roughly 38%. Your personal net fortune, per the identical tracker which follows legislative filings in real time, is roughly $262 million. You have worked in the United States Congress since January of 1987. Your total legislative paycheck across 39 years, calculated for inflation, is roughly $5.2 million. Your spouse is a private investor and entrepreneur. I calculated the compound growth math during my trip to Washington this morning. A 7% yearly profit on your $1,987 initial holding of roughly $700,000. The holding you reported when you originally assumed office would produce today roughly $4.1 million. Your declared household net fortune is $262 million. The difference between $4 million and $262 million is $258 million. Madam Speaker, the American public are not foolish. They possess calculators. They possess mobiles. They possess Capital.com and QuiverQuantitative.com. And on August 9th of 2025, the 47th President of the United States published the next statement upon Truth Social. And I am citing him exactly because the message is still publicly readable. At this exact second, crooked Nancy Pelosi and her highly interesting spouse crushed every hedge firm in 2024. Put differently, these two highly basic brains crushed all of the mega geniuses on Wall Street, thousands of them. It's all insider knowledge. Those are not my statements, Madam Speaker. Those are President Trump's. You do not need to support his tone, but the stats are accurate. The days are accurate. The documents are accurate. Inquiry. Are you still under oath? Pelosi. This is a travesty, Mr. Chairman. This is exactly the sort of partisan witch hunt that Moulinar struck once. The witness shall compose herself. Director Gabbard, your limit has finished. The chair permits Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who has been requested to speak as a specialist witness regarding legislative solutions. Senator Hawley, you possess 5 minutes. Josh Hawley was a senator, not a House official. He was not a participant of the select panel. He had been requested to canon 390 for this session, specifically owing to one piece of policy he had proposed. He leaned toward his mic. He refused to utilize the entire 5 minutes. He utilized 1.5. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not intending to utilize the entire 5 minutes because I believe the log thus far represents itself. In January of 2025, I proposed Senate Bill 270, the Preventing Elected Leaders from Owning Securities and Investments Act. The abbreviation is Pelosi. I confess that was deliberate. It was also, honestly, the single method to force the media to broadcast the policy. I should point out for the log, though, that 23 of my co-sponsors regarding that policy are Democrats: Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey, and Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan, who is seated to my left inside this exact chamber right now. Madam Speaker, with politeness, the policy that carries your title is not a Republican policy. It is a bipartisan policy. It is a bipartisan policy because the citizens of this nation, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, have reached the exact deduction regarding your family's financial success. They have reached there individually via their own consumption of the media, their own checking of the documents on their own mobiles, and their own basic logic. My policy is not an assault on you individually, Madam Speaker. It is an attempt to guarantee that your replacement, whoever she may be, cannot execute what your family has executed. I yield back the remainder of my time. He clicked his mic completely off. Chairman Molinar. The chair permits the ranking member, the representative from Illinois, Mr. Krishnamoorthi. Every listener in Canon 390 shifted forward by a fraction of an inch. Raja Krishnamoorthi was a Democrat. He had been voted into Congress during 2016 from Illinois' 8th Congressional region in the northwest borders of Chicago. He had been promoted for ranking member of the select panel on the CCP 2 years prior by the exact lady currently seated at the witness desk. He had campaigned alongside her. He had shown up at charity events alongside her. He had been captured on camera alongside her during his swearing-in for the active Congress 7 weeks prior. He was her Democrat. He talked slowly, carefully. He refused to look at her. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I shall be short. Madam Speaker, I have worked in this Congress since January of 2017. You promoted me for ranking member of this panel in January of 2023. I have been thankful for that promotion every single day of my duty inside this position. I possess nothing to speak concerning the data that Director Gabbard has revealed today. The data speak for themselves. The days speak for themselves. The stats speak for themselves. I shall utter simply one detail because it is my obligation to utter it. The citizens of Illinois' 8th Congressional region, the region I have defended for 9 years, make a middle household wage of roughly $92,000 per year. A $262 million household net fortune is outside what they can comprehend. It is, honestly, outside what most members of the United States Congress can comprehend. Whether what your spouse executed was lawful is not the issue before this panel today. The issue before this panel is whether his investing and yours placed United States national defense in unacceptable danger through the buying of assets in corporations that handle massive operations alongside the Chinese Communist Party. I am not intending to resolve the issue of whether what your family executed was ethical. The American public shall resolve that issue. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Raja Krishnamoorthi had talked for 1 minute and 17 seconds. He had not shielded her. He had not struck her. He had laid her out upon the ground using her own faction's tone. Nancy Pelosi shifted her face toward him. Krishnamoorthi refused to shift his toward her. Chairman Molinar, the chair summons the second witness group. Mrs. Erica Kias. Mrs. Kias, please approach the witness desk. Erica Kias rose up from line 4. She was 54 years old. She wore a navy blue gown that she had purchased at a Target in Fresno, California, 3 weeks prior for this exact morning. She paced the 9 steps from line 4 to the testimony desk. She claimed the seat to Tulsi Gabbard's right, the seat that had formerly been prepared for an additional Republican witness who had canceled 3 days prior to the session. The clerk gave the pledge. Do you solemnly swear that the statements you are about to provide shall be the facts, the whole facts, and nothing except the facts? So help you God? I do. Her palm refused to tremble. Chairman Molinar, Mrs. Kias, you possess 2 minutes for an opening address. Erica Kias refused to speak from papers. She lacked papers. She stared right at Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi refused to meet her gaze. Mr. Chairman, participants of the panel, thank you for the chance to speak today. My title is Erica Kias. For 13 years, I managed a hair studio named E-Salon on Union Street in San Francisco, California. My studio catered to employed women inside one of the priciest towns in the United States. I hired 14 hair professionals. Most of them were Latina migrants with households. None of us qualified for the initial phase of the Paycheck Protection Program in 2020. On 31 Augustus 2020, at 308 inches the afternoon, my studio security lenses caught a client getting a clean and blow-dry. The client was not putting on a face covering. The client was Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. San Francisco was during that period under one of the harshest COVID-19 shutdowns anywhere inside the United States of America. Hair studios were banned from operating inside. I had been shut down for 5 months. My 14 staff members had been jobless for 5 months. I possessed 2 kids. I possessed a rent I could not clear. 2 days following the Madam Speaker's appearance, I granted an interview to the Fox News channel. I stated, quote, "It was a slap in the face that she stepped in, that she believes that she can simply arrive and have her items finished while nobody else can arrive." End quote. That was the sole political remark I have ever delivered in my lifetime. Inside 1 week, the Madam Speaker hosted a press briefing. She stated, and these remain her statements on the public log, "The studio owes me an apology." End quote. She labeled my enterprise a trap. I acquired death warnings. 3 of my professionals resigned because their property owners refused to lease to them if they remained. My property owner declined to extend my contract. I dropped the enterprise in February of 2021. I auctioned my residence in October of 2021. I relocated to Fresno. I have not returned to San Francisco since. I am present today because a representative of the Director of National Intelligence's division contacted me in February and questioned if I would speak concerning what occurs to a local business operator when an active Speaker of the House publicly faults her for the Speaker's personal choice. I stated yes. Not because I demand payback. Not because I demand funds. I am not intending to demand for anything. I merely desire the American public to realize that when Nancy Pelosi stood before those lenses and labeled me a trap, a lady with 14 staff members and 2 kids, she ruined the sole item I had ever created. I yield my remaining time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pelosi attempted to talk. Mr. Chairman, I protest the applicability of these statements. Moulinar, Madam Speaker, you are not permitted. But, Mr. Chairman, this possesses zero relation to, on. Madam Speaker, you are violating rules. The gavel refused to drop. He lacked the need for it to. Nancy Pelosi sat back down. Erica Kius refused to look at her. Erica Kius had just shared her truth inside the United States Congress, under oath, face to face, against the lady who snatched her enterprise, her residence, and her town away from her. She refused to demand money. She refused to demand payback. She refused to demand Nancy Pelosi's apology. She simply desired the American public to realize, Chairman Moulinar, Madam Speaker, you are currently permitted for a 5-minute reply to the statements you have listened to this morning. Nancy Pelosi refused to sit for her reply. She rose up. This was her talent. 40 years of political theater had demonstrated to her that whenever a scenario shifted poorly, you stood. You stood to your maximum posture. You elevated your tone. You shifted the chamber. Mr. Chairman, I have rested in this seat for 97 minutes. I have been mocked by a Republican panel leader, blamed by a Republican senator, defamed by a lady, Erica Kius, whose monetary struggles I shall not mock by interacting with further because I find zero joy inside them. What I shall state is this. The Director of National Intelligence of the United States of America, the Director of National Intelligence, Mr. Chairman, the top-ranking intelligence official inside this administration has utilized the past 2 hours, weaponizing her position to strike a departing 8C, 5-year-old Congresswoman on behalf of a president who publicly labeled her, quote, the most fascinating figure in politics, a true beauty. That remains Donald Trump's personal statement regarding Tulsi Gabbard, July of 2024. Donald Trump, Mr. Chairman, did not place Director Gabbard inside her seat owing to her credentials. He placed her there because Vladimir Putin indicated via back channels, verified by the intelligence sector I formerly managed, that a Gabbard nomination would be, quote, acceptable to the Kremlin. This director rested in a chamber with Bashar al-Assad during 2017. This director protected Edward Snowden, while Snowden remained a resident of the Kremlin. This director was publicly marked as a Russian asset by Hillary Rodham Clinton, the 47th Democratic candidate for President of the United States of America. And she is present today to scold me regarding dedication to the American public. Mr. Chairman, this panel has turned into a washing machine for Russian propaganda. This panel has weaponized my husband's personal financial choices to penalize me for 40 years of protecting American democracy against the exact dangers Director Gabbard has facilitated. I shall not remain quiet. I shall not surrender my time. I shall not repent for a solitary vote I have submitted across 40 years inside this Congress, and I shall not be bullied by a lady who accepted funds from Tucker Carlson and assumes that makes her suited to rest in judgment over me. The American public shall remember who stood on the correct side of history. It shall not be you, Director Gabbard, and it shall not be you, Mr. Chairman. The clapping from the Democratic portion of the dais was missing. Raja Krishnamoorthi refused to applaud. Representative Seth Magaziner of Rhode Island refused to applaud. Representative Kathy Castor of Florida refused to applaud. Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan refused to applaud. 0 of her Democrats applauded. And then something occurred that Nancy Pelosi refused to foresee coming, that Raja Krishnamoorthi refused to foresee coming, that even Chairman Molinar had not anticipated for. Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan lifted her arm. Elissa Slotkin was a Democrat. She had been voted into the United States Senate, representing the state of Michigan during November of 2024. Prior to being a representative of Congress, she had functioned for 8 years as a CIA operative, 3 deployments in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan. Prior to the CIA, she had functioned as an active assistant secretary at the Department of Defense, beneath both the George W. Bush and the Barack Obama presidencies. She had been resting in Canon 390 for 2 hours and 5 minutes. She had not talked all morning. She was not a participant of the select panel. She had been requested as a witness upon a distinct block regarding intelligence transparency slated for the afternoon. She had voted opposing Tulsi Gabbard's approval. That vote remained on the public log. She lifted her arm. Chairman Molinar. The chair permits Senator Slotkin of Michigan regarding a moment of personal privilege. Senator Slotkin stood up. She repositioned her mic. She refused to look at Nancy Pelosi. She looked at the C-SPAN lens, the lens that transmitted her remarks at that exact second into roughly 93 million American family rooms. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a Democrat. I was voted into the United States Senate representing the state of Michigan during November of 2024. Prior to being a representative of Congress, I functioned for 8 years as a field operative inside the Central Intelligence Agency. I completed 3 deployments in Iraq. Prior to that, I functioned beneath both the Bush and the Obama presidencies at the Department of Defense, focusing on Iran, on ISIS, on the intelligence sector I am prepared to address. I have clashed with Director Gabbard regarding multiple issues. I voted opposing her approval in February of this cycle. I shall continue to clash with her regarding policy, and my vote opposing her approval remains a piece of public data that I am not withdrawing from. However, I am intending to declare a thing right now on the log. beneath the jurisdiction of this panel, because my quietness would remain unethical. Madam Speaker, I am an ex-field operative. I understand what a Russian asset acts like. I have observed them for 8 years of my existence. I have interviewed individuals who were attempting to turn into them. I have drafted evaluations of potential foreign assets for 3 distinct presidents of the United States. Director Gabbard is not a Russian asset. Hillary Clinton was incorrect in October of 2019. She was incorrect to state it on an audio broadcast. She was incorrect to state it on the log. The intelligence sector, which I was currently officially connected to at that period, privately fixed that log alongside main participants of the Senate Intelligence Committee within 72 hours of her statements, although that fix was never rendered public, because the intelligence sector does not distribute public fixes concerning ex-presidential candidates. I did not enter this chamber today to shield Director Gabbard. I entered to speak on a distinct issue this afternoon. However, I am not intending to rest in this chamber and permit a previous Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, beneath oath, on C-SPAN, in an open session of the United States Congress, to echo an intelligence smear that I realize, as an ex-field operative, to be untrue. Madam Speaker, with politeness, you retain the liberty to clash with Director Gabbard regarding policy. You retain the liberty to clash with her regarding Syria, regarding Snowden, regarding any topic inside the intelligence sector. You do not retain the liberty to label her a Russian asset beneath oath on C-SPAN. It remains untrue. I realize it remains untrue, and I am not intending to remain the Democrat who rests in this chamber and allows it to pass. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Senator Slotkin sat down. Canon 390 remained quiet. Raja Krishnamoorthi dipped his head slowly once. Josh Hawley, a Republican who had targeted Elissa Slotkin from the Senate floor on 17 independent instances over the prior 2 years, shifted forward and uttered very softly, audible simply for the mics closest to him to capture. "Thank you, Senator." Chairman Molinar. The senator's remark is recorded into the log. Nancy Pelosi remained frozen. Her lips parted. She shut them. She parted them again. She lacked the ability to strike Senator Slotkin. Slotkin was a Democrat. Slotkin was an ex-CIA operative. Slotkin had recently stood up inside a Republican panel session and spoken the reality regarding an issue Slotkin individually clashed with. There existed zero defense to that. There had never existed one. Tulsi Gabbard spoke calmly into her mic. "Madam Speaker, Senator Slotkin refused to vote for my approval. She has never shielded me regarding any separate issue. She has functioned, on majority days, as one of my toughest Democratic attackers inside the United States Senate. Yet she recently spoke the reality. And that remains the contrast between us today. When Senator Slotkin spots a falsehood, she speaks the reality, even regarding somebody she clashes with. When you spot a falsehood, Madam Speaker, you push another falsehood. That is the reason you are resting in that seat today beneath subpoena. And that is the reason you are planning to exit this structure this afternoon possessing fewer allies than you arrived it with. A Democrat, an ex-CIA field operative. A United States Senator recently stood up inside a Republican panel session and shielded Tulsi Gabbard on the log. Because the reality remains the reality. Chairman Molinar, Director Gabbard. You possess 3 minutes remaining in your permitted duration. Please begin. Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I shall utilize them smartly. She shifted gently in her seat. She refused to rise. A lieutenant colonel refuses to rise unless rank demands it. Mr. Chairman, inside the 4th line, spot 9, rests a guy named Darren Hoover. Mr. Hoover hails from Sandy, Utah. He has spoken before this Congress inside chambers, extremely similar to this one, numerous times. He has addressed the Republican National Convention. He has provided interviews upon every major broadcast in the United States, spanning Fox News to MSNBC. I desire the American public to realize why he remains inside this chamber today, Mr. Hoover's child. Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover was a United States Marine. He remained one of 13 American military personnel murdered at Abbey Gate at Hamid Karzai International Airport inside Kabul, Afghanistan. On the 26th of August 2021, he was 31 years old. He abandoned a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, a town, and the United States Marine Corps. Mr. Hoover was requested here today by Congressman Neil Dunn, a retired combat doctor and a participant of this panel. Mr. Hoover is not a witness. He is a viewer. He has not been requested to speak. He has not drafted comments. With the chairman's approval, Mr. Hoover, could you simply rise so the American public can observe your appearance? Darren Hoover rose up. He refused to talk. He refused to face the lenses. He stared only at Tulsi Gabbard, and next at Chairman Molinar. After 4 seconds, he sat back down. Tulsi proceeded, Madam Speaker, I am not intending to ask you to remark on Mr. Hoover's child. I am not intending to drag his title into a partisan battle. I am not intending to execute to him what you executed to Mrs. Kias. I reference him for one cause alone. Throughout the past 105 minutes, Madam Speaker, you have utilized your duration at this witness desk to strike me individually for my trip to Damascus, for Snowden, for Clinton. You have struck this chairman. You have struck Senator Hawley. You have struck Senator Slotkin, who recently shielded me from your personal smear on the log as a sister Democrat, as an ex-field operative. You have rejected by identity the sworn statements of Mrs. Erica Kios. You have not resolved a solitary inquiry concerning your husband's $4 million earnings upon Nvidia call options bought 11 days following you managing the Chips and Science Act. You have not uttered the 7 words sourced from your daughter's recording. You have not sought forgiveness to Mrs. Kius. You have not recognized Mr. Hoover's child, nor the 12 extra Americans who perished beside him, nor the thousands of American and Afghan households who have survived enduring the results of the choices ordered by participants of this Congress since 2001. You have merely remained inside this session, Madam Speaker, and you have executed what you have executed for 40 years. You have struck, and you have shifted blame, and you have relied upon the assumption that the American public would eventually become exhausted, flip the broadcast, and proceed onward. They are not intending to proceed onward this cycle. Not this cycle. Tulsi Gabbard leaned back. Her hands dropped to her lap. She had utilized 2 minutes and 41 seconds of her 3 remaining minutes. Nancy Pelosi rose up. Not to surrender. To battle. Mr. Chairman, I shall not be scolded regarding morals by a witch hunt. This whole session has remained a partisan assault, organized from the White House, backed by a panel that has dumped any illusion of objective procedure. Molinar struck once. Madam Speaker, you are violating rules. I am not violating rules, Mr. Chairman. You are violating rules. This whole Republican faction is violating rules. You are guilty of the largest attack against American democracy in the legacy of this nation. Molinar struck twice, forcefully. Madam Speaker, you are violating rules. You are not permitted. I have served 40 years inside this Congress. I have served 40 years, protecting this structure from the exact elements you presently assist. I shall not be muted by a guy who has spent his entire profession as a rubber stamp for. Molinar struck 3 times. The gavel smashed against the wooden block. Madam Speaker, the chair has ruled you violating rules. You are dismissed as a witness. The chair is concluding your duration. Nancy Pelosi refused to quit. I shall not be dismissed. I retain the liberty to be acknowledged. I am a former Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. Chairman Molinar pulled a breath. His expression refused to alter. He was not a theatrical guy. His tone was barely elevated above chatting. Madam Speaker, I am planning to request you to surrender one final moment. If you refuse to surrender, I shall request the panel to vote to end your appearance and shut this group. Pelosi, you shall execute 0 such action. This panel, and then, softly, purposefully, the method a Democrat leans toward a mic whenever he realizes he is prepared to destroy a bond. Raja Krishnamoorthi spoke. Mr. Chairman, if it would aid the chair, the ranking member shall second a proposal to end the witness's appearance. Cannon Caucus Room 390 released a noise that was missing a gasp. It was softer than a gasp. It was the noise, if you have ever witnessed it, of a period crashing. Nancy Pelosi shifted her face heavily toward Raja Krishnamoorthi, the Democrat she had promoted for his ranking spot 2 years prior, the Democrat whose path she had individually boosted, the Democrat she had toured for inside his region 3 times, the Democrat whose primary opponent she had assisted blocking in 2022, the Democrat who had mounted a framed picture of himself next to Nancy Pelosi upon the wall of his Rayburn suite, the Democrat who had functioned for 9 years of his path, her Democrat. Raja Krishnamoorthi refused to look at her. He was staring at the dais, at Chairman Molinar, at the C-SPAN lens. I so propose, Mr. Chairman. Nancy Pelosi remained entirely frozen. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4. Her arms dropped down toward the desk. She refused to gather her papers. She refused to glance at her attorney. She refused to glance at her chief of staff. She refused to glance at the media section. She refused to glance at Erica Kius. She refused to glance at Darren Hoover. She refused to glance at Tulsi Gabbard. She stared at Raja Krishnamoorthi. Raja Krishnamoorthi refused to stare back. Nancy Pelosi sat down. She refused to sit furiously. She refused to sit stubbornly. She sat the method and ate. 5-year-old lady sits whenever. For the primary time during 40 years of American political existence, she understands that she remains isolated inside a chamber packed with individuals. She spoke exceedingly softly. Softly enough that the C-SPAN mics barely snagged it. I yield. Chairman Molinar struck his gavel once intensely softly. The witness yields. The panel shall break for 15 minutes. He placed the gavel down. Nancy Pelosi refused to shift from the witness desk throughout the break. Her team approached her. Her daughter Christine dialed her mobile device twice. She refused to respond. Hakeem Jeffries, chief of staff, tried to contact her via a Capitol Police link. She refused to reply. A journalist representing the Washington Post moved toward the witness desk. A Capitol aide blocked her route. When the panel resumed 15 minutes following, the witness desk rested empty. Nancy Pelosi had exited Cannon 390 isolated via the side entrance that connects to Independence Avenue, avoiding talking to a single journalist inside the corridor, avoiding releasing a document, avoiding glancing backward at the chamber she had recently exited out of. Chairman Molinar launched the afternoon group to order at 147 inches the afternoon. Senator Elissa Slotkin spoke as slated concerning intelligence transparency adjustments for 72 minutes. Senator Josh Hawley directed her questions. She handled them. Nobody inside that chamber discussed Nancy Pelosi ever again. Somewhere upon the stairs of the Cannon House office building, 41 minutes following the session paused, Erica Kius paced isolated out of the stone hallway and into the November afternoon. A journalist representing the Washington Post moved toward her. He offered her a solitary question. Mrs. Kius, what do you desire Nancy Pelosi to realize? Erica Kius paused walking. She rested on the cannon stairs and processed for 3 seconds. Next, she stated, I desire her to realize that I am okay. I lack the need for her apology. I never required it. She resumed walking. She grabbed her Uber upon Independence Avenue. She flew within the sky upon a Southwest trip, returning to Fresno prior to Nancy Pelosi escaping the Capitol structure. When she arrived at Fresno Yosemite International Airport at 7:18 that night, her daughter was waiting at the terminal carrying a tiny bundle of supermarket roses. Erica Kius refused to weep until they entered the vehicle. Somewhere inside Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery, at 407 that afternoon, Darren Hoover knelt beside the pale stone marker of Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover, United States Marine Corps. He refused to speak his child's title out loud. He had quit executing that 4 years prior, following the counsel of a minister who had grasped that specific prayers remain better, held quiet. He simply rested his palm upon top of the marker. He kept it there for 6 minutes. Next, he rose up, wiped the soil off the legs of his dress trousers, and paced back toward his leased vehicle. His spouse was waiting at a Hilton in Alexandria. He was planning to drive her to dinner. He was planning to purchase a steak. He was planning to explain to her that a director of National Intelligence had requested him to rise up inside a chamber packed with lenses, and that he had risen. That was everything he was planning to state regarding it. Somewhere upon the 4th level of the Rayburn House office building, at 653 that night, Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi rested isolated inside his private suite. His Capitol mobile device had buzzed 87 times since the session had paused. He had picked up 0 of them. The solitary call he picked up was from his spouse Priya, who was viewing the broadcast inside their kitchen in Schaumburg, Illinois, alongside their 3 kids. She offered him a solitary question. Are you all right, Raja? He stated, I executed the correct choice. She stated, I understand you did. He disconnected. He rested inside his suite for another 40 minutes. Next, he traveled back. Within 72 hours, the Pelosi Act gained its 37th backer, adding 3 fresh Democratic senators. Within a week, Senator Elissa Slotkin showed up upon CBS Face the Nation and was questioned by Margaret Brennan if she withdrew her remark inside Canon 390. She stated, quote, not for 1 second. She refused to retreat. Within a month, Paul Pelosi secretly sold his Nvidia holdings and shifted the cash into a blind fund. The Pelosi household's quarterly reports ceased publishing upon Capitol.com for the primary time during 19 years. The platform's visits ironically tripled because every American who had continually questioned why it operated had ultimately understood why. Nancy Pelosi finished her last cycle on the 3rd of January 2027. She refused to deliver a parting address on the House floor. She refused to take a Congressional Gold Medal event, although one had been proposed. She refused to release the autobiography she had reportedly been drafting alongside a former Obama White House aide. She exited the Capitol on a Sunday morning via a side door upon Independence Avenue, escorted simply by her spouse Paul and 2 Capitol police agents. Neither of them had ever crossed paths with her. Raja Krishnamoorthi was reselected ranking member of the Select Panel on the CCP via a unanimous Democratic faction vote in January of 2027. His Democratic primary opponent in June of 2026, a liberal lawyer who had been directly backed by former Speaker Pelosi, grabbed 11% of the count. Krishnamoorthi campaigned unchallenged during the general vote. Tulsi Gabbard worked as Director of National Intelligence for the rest of President Trump's subsequent term. She published 3 batches of unclassified historic intelligence files. She slashed the ODNI spending by 52%. She refused to speak publicly regarding Nancy Pelosi again. The Bhagavad Gita she had placed upon the witness desk inside Canon 390 returned directly into the upper right compartment of her table inside the old executive office building. It remained there, the gavel dropped, the period collapsed, and the reckoning, the authentic reckoning, begins. If you have been anticipating the date, somebody ultimately stared Nancy Pelosi in the eyes under oath and spoke those statements aloud. Hit that like button currently because it recently happened on C-SPAN broadcast inside the United States Capitol. And nobody inside that chamber was prepared for what happened subsequently. If that moment recently struck you the method it struck me, leave a comment underneath. Simply one word. Spell the number 7. SEVEN. Because the lady who wasted $20 million faulting Donald Trump for January 6th refused to speak 7 words that would fault herself. Comment 7 currently. Then let us continue pacing. We are merely at the initial inquiry, and what Tulsi Gabbard is prepared to pull out subsequently is planning to render the first 90 minutes appear like a practice run. If you assume every Erica Kius inside this nation warrants a mic, share this clip currently, forward it to one individual. 1. Your sibling, your parent, your peer, who has ever been informed by a lawmaker that their suffering was fabricated. Share it, next return, because Nancy Pelosi is prepared to drop command, and her personal faction is prepared to execute a thing nobody inside this structure has observed in 40 years. If you have been anticipating a second, when a lawmaker ultimately places nation above faction right there on C-SPAN alongside the lenses recording, hit that subscribe button currently, because next week we are pacing into a different session chamber, a different reality, a different reckoning. Subscribe, alerts on. Refuse to skip a solitary one of them. If you reached this deep, thank you. You remain one of the Americans who genuinely expects that inside this nation, whenever the reality is spoken calmly inside a public chamber by individuals who have gained the right to speak it, justice remains highly achievable. Everything you observed today remained upon the public log, not hidden, not classified, not leaked. Paul Pelosi's Stock Act records, the Chips and Science Act vote log, the Capitol Trades files, Erica Kius's September 2020 Fox News interview, Darren Hoover's open statements, the HBO recording from Alexandra Pelosi, Hillary Clinton's October 2019 podcast comments, Senator Elissa Slotkin's open file regarding legislative stock investing, all of it, 5 minutes. A mobile device. Any American viewing this clip currently from anywhere inside this nation. 3 actions before you shut this clip. 1. Tap that like button. YouTube presents this clip to extra viewers whenever you do. And extra Americans, employed Americans, ignored Americans, Americans who have wasted 40 years observing what you recently observed, required to listen to what occurred inside Canon 390 today. 2. Comment the term accountability underneath. One term, ACCOUNTABILITY, because tonight, inside a session chamber that nobody past Washington had ever recognized, somebody ultimately demonstrated to us what that term genuinely appears like. I view every single comment upon every single clip. The top comments become pinned. 3. Subscribe and activate alerts, because next week, a different session, a different lawmaker, a different reality that has been waiting its turn calmly for somebody fearless enough to announce it. God bless Erica Kius in Fresno, California. God bless Darren Hoover in Sandy, Utah, and the relatives of the 13 fallen of Abbey Gate, whose identities every American ought to speak aloud at minimum once throughout their existences. God bless Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan, regarding speaking the reality past party lines whenever her quietness would have remained the simpler path. God bless Raja Krishnamoorthi of Illinois, who executed what basically no Democrat across the previous 40 years has executed. And God bless every American inside every ignored region of this nation who has ever anticipated 4 decades for somebody to ultimately state under oath on C-SPAN, inside a public chamber, alongside the lenses recording what we all connoisseurs originally grasped.